Hi everyone, this is the Fly Culture Podcast. I'm Pete Tigers. You may have seen that my guest today has released a new fly fishing short that we've been proud to have helped with a little. It looks at the meaning of fishing to one person rather than being a fish porn fest, and we've discussed on previous podcasts perhaps this is the way fishing is shifting. I'm looking forward to discussing this along with how his life took a new direction, filmmaking and of course fishing. I'm really pleased to welcome back Damon Valentine to the podcast. Damon, great to catch up with you again. How are you doing today?
I'm really well, thanks, Pete. Yeah, sorry it's so early on a Sunday, but life is busy, and I'm just thankful that you agreed to to meet at this time. So yeah, but I'm really well, thanks. Can't complain.
Good. And like we say, your life has changed quite dramatically. And I know we speak a fair bit on the phone, but I think it's a while since we have fished together. Actually, we did on the test, actually. I forgot about that one as well. But when you were down here in Devon with your then girlfriend, Fran, a lot's changed, hasn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. That was, I think it was either July or August 2019.
Wow.
So we're coming up on 5 years. And we recorded a podcast in you'll have to remind me where it was. Was it the Fox?
Yep, Fox and Hounds, yep.
Fox and Hounds Hotel, yeah. Which used to be, one of the biggest angling accommodation places in Devon, right? Back in the day, lots of history down there. So it's been 5 years and almost, and a lot has changed. I've got a kid now, I've got a little boy. He's coming up to be a year next week. So the last year has really changed things. But previous to that, we were living in London, and obviously COVID happened, and that first lockdown came about. And I was working for a tech startup based in California, but they were trying to expand into the UK. And I was in London, but an opportunity came up to move to open a Southampton branch of what, and I thought, well, chalk stream country, and the money was great, so I couldn't really turn it down. So we up sticks and we came to Winchester, which is where we are now, and I drove myself into the ground with work, and for about a year. And then decided that I just couldn't do it anymore. And it was that, I'm sure lots of listeners have been through the same thing. You plow everything into your work and you realize that actually that's not the important thing. And, I was missing out on fishing opportunities, and I was just constantly stressed, and a 60-hour week was the norm, which is not healthy for anybody, especially when you're lining someone else's pockets. So, right about that time, actually, I was talking to Pete McLeod, because he had asked me to do some guiding for Aardvark, because I'd moved down, and when I was in London, I used to travel down and do a bit of guiding on the test. So he said to me, "Oh, there's a job going at Pure Fishing, which is Hardy and Grays, for those who don't know. They need a content creator." And for those listeners who don't know, in like 2017, 2018, I went on this run of making YouTube vlogs about fly fishing. I think I did about 5 in the end. And it was something I was really passionate about. But then I got to a point with work where I couldn't balance the two, and then that fell off. And I really wanted to tap back into that creative side, because I've always been super creative. You'll see there, I've got my guitar hung up on the wall, and often I play with that when I'm editing or thinking about ideas for videos. So, we connected and with Pete McLeod, and then he put me in touch with the guy at Pure Fishing, and I went through an interview process, and I got the job as their kind of content creator for the UK, which was I loved it. I loved my time there, but I very quickly outgrew the role. I'm quite a driven person, and I think they just, wanted me to make YouTube videos forever, and that really wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to get into the filmmaking aspect of things. I still, make brand story stuff, and I still do promotional content for brands, but it was the filmmaking aspect that I really wanted to develop. And so I got enough courage together to go out and do it on my own. So I've been in business for just over a year, and when I think back to how busy I am now versus me sat here twiddling my thumbs, a year ago, thinking, where's my next job coming from? How am I going to pay the mortgage? I'm glad I took the leap of faith. It's been a real journey, but I looking back, I wish I'd have done it sooner, because you can never say never, but I don't think I could work for anybody else now. It's such a liberating feeling, being able to an extent pick and choose what you do, and do the things that fulfill you on a daily basis, and not just wait, around for something that comes up every so often that might fulfill you. Every single piece of work that I have on at the minute is really fulfilling. So it's great. I'm in a really good place. Very tired, but good place.
That's great to hear. And I remember, we've had many conversations when you've been looking at making those changes in direction. And I know we talked about the guiding, and along with a lot of other things as well. And I was I was thinking about the vlog that you made, and I seem to recall that you did one with Andy as well, that it was about -35 and you're on the Usk, and you're trying to catch March browns, I think, or a large dark hatch. Was that sort of in your mind at the time, that you say that you were an incredibly creative person, you are of course that, but was it in your mind even at that stage that perhaps that could turn into something for you?
If I'm being honest, no. So at that time, when I remember that trip with Andy, it was a great trip, and it was actually, we both recorded our separate vlogs, and my vlog never came to fruition. It never made it. Life just took over, and I think, if I'm being honest, I'd kind of fallen out of love with it a little bit at that point, because anyone who's tried to film themselves while they fish will know that is a joyless process at times, and you can't. I always used to say to people, it's 70% filming, 30% fishing, and if you don't catch anything, then that is, back then that was, the video would never be a video, because there was no fish in it. So that was I'd never fished the Usk before as well, and I just really wanted to fish the Usk, and so Andy did a lot more filming than I did, and put together a really, really great video, and I just managed to catch a couple of really nice trout. So, and then the stuff that I had, I don't even know where it is. It's probably on a hard drive somewhere. But it was actually, I'll tell you what it was that really got me into it, was when I started working at Pure Fishing. I got my hands on a proper camera, and I dabbled in it before, because in a previous life I worked at Apple in London, and that's how I got into making the vlogs. Was I used to hang around with this guy who went to film school, and our job, or his job, was to show people how to get the best out of their iPhones to make films, and my job, previously being a musician, was to show people how to record music on their phones, their iPads, and their computers and stuff. But I very quickly, at that point, the music, I decided that I was going to step away from music, but I still needed something to. It was the story. It's the storytelling for me. That's that was what came through in the songwriting. I was really good at creative writing at school, English, and I used to write quite a lot, and poetry and short stories and things. And then, so being able to put together a story with video seemed like a natural progression. So when I got my hands on a proper camera for real, which was in my possession, which was probably about May 2021, when I first started at Pure Fishing. I think I don't know. I got that job, but I totally blagged it, because I'd never properly used, a mirrorless camera or a DSLR or an SLR. And I remember the week before I started at Pure Fishing, I got it's total. I've never told anybody this, but I don't mind telling the world.
Nobody's listening, so you're fine.
I bought an online course called 14-Day Filmmaker, and it's like a crash course of just the basics pretty much. And that's what I did. I did it in a week because I was just, and then I locked myself away in a room, and Fran was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I need to learn how to use all this stuff before I start the job. Otherwise, they're going to find me out and sack me." So I just absorbed it all up. And then a couple of weeks later, I think I made my first video. And it's funny, I watched it back the other day because I actually made that with Patrick Tillard, and he was doing lots of YouTube stuff at the time, and he said, "Oh, do you remember that film that we shot?" And I went back and watched it, and I was like, "Oh, you know what? It's actually okay. That I'm quite impressed that I managed to pull that off." So, that was the beginning of it for me. I'm really geeky when it comes to all the technical stuff, the cameras and things like that. And I'm in the Sony camp. For those that don't know, there's like a Sony, Canon, Nikon or Nikon, whatever you call it, kind of a Fujifilm as well, like 4-way kind of thing. But I'm in the Sony camp. So if anybody wants to talk to me about Sony cameras, like, I am all there. I mean, I had somebody messaging me last night who had watched the film, asking me what cameras I shot it on and things like that. And I love those conversations. They're great, the technical stuff. So, that was, and I remember Pete McLeod said to me at the time, "You've just stepped foot onto a really slippery slope with, lenses and equipment and stuff." And he was not wrong, because here I am with, all the equipment in the world, and it's a bit bonkers, really. But I love it. It's brilliant.
It's really interesting for me that you use the word blag, because getting into that role is almost a bit old school when you could get a job that way. And often, as an old codger like myself, that you could do those sorts of things and companies would see potential in somebody. But you also mentioned the word drive earlier as well. And I think that's probably, rather than blagging, that has probably got you to that first stage and then propelled things on a little bit more. And for me, that's really great. And the reason I say that, I think, is that because fishing is often seen as a bit of a sleepy backwater, it's a bit slow, it's a bit behind the curve. And perhaps in some respects, that played into your strengths. And I'm using inverted commas again when I use the word blag, but being able to use that rather than having to tick the correct amount of boxes for qualifications, experience, whatever it may be, they saw something, you sold it yourself and pulled it off. Now, I'm sure that's probably not a fluke as well that you pulled it off. So I think there's kudos to be had there. Sony, definitely, our daughter's a photographer, and she uses Sony because she thinks it's fantastic as well. A big fan of that. But do you think that was how that was operating, and thinking about fly fishing in the way that we do? I guess we're segueing away a little bit at the moment, but how that allowed you that first initial break into what has become your full-time job?
Yeah, but possibly. I mean, I think it definitely helped that I had. I mean, the people that interviewed me were aware that I had, a very modest social media presence, and that I was, I was actively fly fishing. The role was to cover multi-discipline, all sorts of different types of fishing, because under the Pure Fishing umbrella, you have many different brands. And so I made sea fishing videos, carp fishing videos, coarse fishing videos. I also did a lot of photography while I was there as well, and I really loved that aspect of it. So it was, I think about my time at Pure Fishing, and I'm forever grateful, because what they did was they afforded me the time to just go off and experiment. And I didn't have anybody breathing down my neck. I just had people checking in with me every now and again saying, "Could you go and do this shoot, or could you organize this?" And, I was very lucky in the fact that they gave me a company credit card, and if I needed something, I could, with permission, if I justified why I needed it, then I could get it. So, I was spoilt rotten, really, and it was a great apprenticeship. That's the way that I look at it. It was a fantastic apprenticeship, but I got towards the end, and I just knew that it wasn't what I wanted to do forever. And I think there was talk of me going into being a brand manager for Grays, and it was an idea that was floated. It definitely wasn't anything that was set in stone, or it was just suggested to me a couple of times that would I go that way. But I just love creating things, and I just knew, and that's the thing, when you're part of a big company like that, there's often a lot of changes, and Pure Fishing had seen a lot of changes. And subsequently, since I've left, many of the people that I worked with now don't have jobs because of, all the movement and things like that. So that was another part that scared me, was not having control over that aspect of it. And I just wanted to have control over my own destiny. If something goes wrong in my business, it's my fault. I can't blame anyone else. It's one of those. So I wanted that. I wanted that control over everything. So I can't make myself redundant. So that type of thing. So I've actually forgotten the original question you asked. I just went off on some tangent then, but yeah, I hope I answered it in a roundabout way.
I think you did. And that's the wonderful thing, I think, about this podcast, is that there are no rules about it. And we've already gone way off what I suggested we would talk about. And I think the conversation is stronger as a result of that as well. And I wanted to ask you, because you talked about filming many fishing disciplines, I often have photographers, filmmakers on, and ask them the question about fly fishing being so photogenic. Of the disciplines you were covering, was fly fishing noticeably more easier for you to work with from a content point of view?
Yes, because of the nuances of fly fishing, the tiny details that I know, because I've done it since, I'm 40 this year. I picked up a fly rod when I was 10. So, it's 30 years of fly fishing, means that the tiniest details that people might miss if they have no experience or little experience in the sport, if they were filming it, then, and that has actually stood me in good stead. That's the reason I've got, I've got a really big job at the moment for Sportfish. And one of the reasons that they approached me was because I fly fish, but also because I make videos. So, and I think they'd used somebody previously, and that, although the content was really good, it had been a struggle to get it to that point, because there was lots of technical stuff that the person doing the videos didn't understand. And, so I would say, yes, I found fly fishing the easiest because it was, that's my thing. And I struggled a little bit with, in the beginning, with all of the other stuff, especially coarse fishing and like carp fishing. Like, my word, that is something else. That is a whole entire different world of nuance and, tactics and rigs and things. And I would often, when I was filming stuff, I would have to ask the person I was filming, like, what is this? What does this do? Or can you show me how that works? And because I'd need to know, because otherwise that, I'd make mistakes in the edit. And I remember a couple of my early videos, I did make mistakes in the edit because people left comments on YouTube saying, the person would be talking about a certain rig, and then I cut to a rig that was slightly different, and somebody would say, that's the wrong rig. So I think that's the reason a lot of brands have in-house content creators who specialize in certain things. You look at all of the, the carp brands, like Corda, or I can't think of any off the top of my head now, but all the big sort of independent, like Nash and all that stuff. They've got a team of in-house videographers and editors, and they all carp fish pretty much. I'd be surprised if any of them don't. But that means that they can work quicker and that they can understand what they're trying to convey through the video, and they can understand what the audience might want because they themselves are the audience. So I totally get why brands, fishing brands in particular, want in-house people. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to move on a little bit, and you said about 70-30, that's when you've got a camera and a fishing rod, it's 70%, you've got the camera, 30% the rod. Does that mean it's cut into your fishing time a bit? Does it mean you don't get to fish as much as you used to or want to?
Exactly that. I don't record myself fishing anymore. I mean, I haven't done it since 2018. I love to be behind the camera, and I'll do a little bit. There's been times where I've had to be in front of the camera, and that's fine. But I actually, that's a lie. I did a few vlogs when I was at Pure Fishing, and that was difficult. To try and pull those off, and a lot of them ended up on the scrap heap because you just it's just trying to make a vlog for 3 days on the River Tyne in October catching salmon when the water's perfect and you still don't catch a salmon that's salmon fishing, but in a way I set myself up for a fall there because I was trying to film myself and it was just too difficult. But yeah, sorry, what was the question?
So are you getting to go fishing?
No, is the answer. No, the last time I went fishing, I had a day at Elladine, and that was to scratch an itch. It was the day before BFFI, and my friend had said, "Why don't you come up and we'll get out for the day?" And it was great. It was a great play. I was there last week actually filming, so I wasn't fishing, but it was a great day. And the time before that, I think I'd had a couple of hours on the itching in November and October, and I'd had really good couple of hours. I caught, like, not that it matters, but it's still nice to catch fish. But I had a handful of grayling on each session, so it was good. But for me, I've got to really pick and choose my. As most people who listen to this who have children will understand, it completely changes your life, especially when you have one that doesn't want to sleep at night. Really knocks everything into the next day. And for me, 2-3 hours on the river outside my house, I'm very, very fortunate where I live, that I've got access to about a mile of water that is full of little wild trout and grayling and the odd massive pike, and sometimes if I'm lucky I see a salmon or a sea trout. But yeah, that's a whole other story, but those are few and far between these days. But yeah, it's I think I've booked today on Chew Valley with my best pal. We're going to go and sit in a boat for about 8 hours and just catch up, because we haven't caught up in such a long time. He's got a kid as well now, so it's yeah. And then there was talk of going up to the Findhorn in May to do another spate thing with Colin and Lana and Patrick, but I'm not sure I can make that because of the amount of work that I've got on, which is a wonderful position to be in. But still, I'll get serious FOMO, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned Chew, you've mentioned Elladine, you've mentioned the Itchin. What is it for you? Is it Stillwater or a river? If you get one of those rare days to be able to put your rod in the back of the car or walk across the road, what will it be for you? What would you choose for your day when you get it?
Well, it'd actually be my night, be sea trout fishing, closely followed by a day on a spate river for salmon. But nighttime sea trout, I always try and explain to people that sea trout fishing is a niche within a niche. It really separates the maybe it's the wrong way to put it, the weed from the chaff, but there's no just tagging along for a bit of a laugh or whatever. Like, if you're sea trout fishing, it's like a covert military operation. You need to have all the right gear. You need to do things, safely. You need to know the water. You need to know that there's fish there. That all that type of thing. And yeah, so for me, if a night on the Towie or the Itchin or wherever lower down the Itchin, we've got some good sea trout fishing down here, although it is eye-wateringly expensive. So I don't do it that often. And because it's at night, and my little boy last year was a horrendous sleeper, I actually had to cancel two nights on there, sadly. But the 2 nights that I did fish it, I think we got into divorce territory because the next day is a write-off. You're useless. You fish all night, and then it's just you're useless. So in a way, you're not around for 2 days, even though you've only been gone for a night. So yeah, but hopefully I'll get out this year and get a few more nights on the river. So yeah. We'll see what happens.
It's nice you mentioned the Itchin. I think I know where you mean, and I fished there, and it's quite surreal. And after you've done an evening of fishing, it's quite a long drive back to Devon. I was utterly exhausted for 2 or 3 days as a result of it, because we'd got there at 7 o'clock in the evening, figured out what was going on, had something to eat, fished long and hard, and then drove home again, and that was quite extreme. So I guess that's where you're getting at with it. It almost has, may not be the right term, but religious-like status, that the followers of that. I don't pretend to be one. I've not done it for a little while now. I guess because it's relatively close to me, and I'd much rather catch trout or catch sea trout during the day on dry flies as well. So I give that a wider berth, but fully understand the love, the passion for that species. That, again, and we often use that term when the line comes to life and it's a savage take from a sea trout, is pretty spectacular, isn't it?
Like it, yeah. Nothing like it, especially down there, So for the listeners that don't know what I'm talking about, the Woodmill pool down at the bottom of the Itchin, so it's tidal. I've had some pinch me moments down there. Real, about 3 years ago, my best ever night sea trout fishing there was 23 fish, and I lost probably just as many. And it was just, and I remember driving back home, and I had one like about 7 pounds, and that was the second to last fish that I'd had just as it was coming light. And I remember thinking, this must have been what it was like, 30, 40 years ago on all of those really good sea trout rivers that you read about in books and things like that. And, and nights like that must have been commonplace when there was plenty of fish in the river and things like that. But, yes, so it's, I mean, there's nothing like it. You talk about driving up from Devon. So last year, it was the last weekend of May, I invited my best mate, and he lives down near Exeter. So he drove all the way there to Woodmill, which took him about 3 hours to 2.5, 3 hours. And that time of year, there's a few fish in the pool, but you're searching for, there's no shoals of fish. You're searching for the bigger fish that come in, usually solitary creatures. And we fished from about 9 o'clock. We fished until about 12:30, and we were sat in the little hut there having a drink. And he said, "I'm going. I've got a big day tomorrow. I need to drive back." And I said, "Oh, come on, let's just let's just give it another 15 minutes. And, you go off that bit and I'll go off this bit." And he said, "Okay, I mean, are you sure? You go where you want to go." And now I've got a couple of favourites kind of casts and lines that I like to throw into certain spots. I said, "No, I'll go and do that. You go off that stanchion there." And he went and caught a 12-pound sea trout. Couldn't believe it, honestly. That he's got his last invite, that's for sure. But no. All joking aside, it was one of those incredibly special moments to be a part of, because he is my best friend. He is a sea trout specimen hunter, and he never had a double up until that point. He'd lost them, and he'd come really close. He lost one about 15 pounds on the Hodder about 10 years ago, and he almost sold all of his gear because of it, because it was just, he'd had it on for like half an hour, and it came off just at the last minute. And So for him, it was a moment of absolute triumph and relief, and there was so much emotion. And he actually screamed when we got it in the net because he couldn't believe it. And that was a really special moment. So, but then he had a very long drive back to Devon as well. But he was so excited and so full of adrenaline that I think he just carried on the next day and then just crashed in the evening. So, but yes, sea trout fishing for me is the one, that's for sure.
Nice. And you touched on something before we move on to the film. You touched on something talking about how you imagine the river might have been years back. As somebody who's in and around fly fishing and has been for many, many years, it's a question I often ask people because I'm really trying to get a sense of how it feels. I'm trying to get an idea of people who are involved with it, looking at it from deeply inside, but also from the outside as well. How does it look and feel to you right now, fly fishing?
As a whole?
Yeah.
I think we're in a moment of in the UK where we're seeing people diversify, and I know you've spoken about this lately on other podcasts with other guests, but we are in a moment of people are going off in different directions with a fly rod. Be it barbel, be it mullet, be it coarse fish, be it coastal sea trout. That's the next big, for me, that is the next big one that's going to take off. Is we're going to turn into an army of sort of coastal fishers like Denmark or Scandinavia, because the fish are there. You just need to find them, and that's the thing with the ocean is it's so vast. But sea trout tend to stick quite close to the shore in most instances. I know. Speaking to Dan Osmond, actually, obviously he's got a science background. He was telling me that some of the fish that have been tagged off the south coast have gone into the trench in the channel and gone up to Holland, but they tend to be the bigger fish. So I think there's plenty of fishing to be discovered, particularly in the saltwater scene, and particularly with sea trout. And hey, a great bycatch of that is bass. I mean, the night that Pete caught that 12-pounder, I caught like a 6.5 pound bass. And I took a picture of it and then I just let it swim. I was like, he's just had a 12-pound sea trout. No one's going to care about my 6-pound bass. That's so, but that in itself is a fantastic fish to catch on the fly. So I think we're in a moment of diversification. That's for sure. And you got plenty of people putting stuff up online. I watched one of Tim's videos last night, funnily enough, which was the coastal sea trout one. Super interesting because I'd had a chat with Sean Morrissey, Sean Afnan, because he'd gone along to fish on the same day, and he was telling me about it on the phone the other day, and I was like, man, it just reminds me of when I went to Denmark. So if I had the time, I'd be out on the coast searching for some likely spots, but I'll probably wait for someone else to find a few spots and then I'll just dip in for a couple of hours at some point. But yeah, a moment of diversification. That's where I think we're at with fly fishing.
And this segues beautifully as well. I said in the introduction about the film that you've made isn't about the fish porn. It is a story about someone. I and others as well have tried to suggest this a little bit more. Do you think we are starting to shift away from that as well, that the grip and grin isn't the major currency for people? It is the storytelling of a day that's becoming more and more prevalent in social media and in filmmaking as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think the grip and grin phenomena probably peaked maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Just my opinion on that one, but I think there's still a place. It still has a place and it still has an audience. But I think for people who are just your average everyday fisher, like me, I don't, I'd seldom go abroad to fish, and if I do, it's not very far away. And we have such great water here that, for the money that it would cost to go abroad, I'd rather go and have, a week somewhere on this island rather than spend, 2 days on another island. I'd rather get more fishing in than. So I think, I was asked this quite. I did an interview the other day, funnily enough, for a film student's kind of end of year project, and he asked me what my most memorable fishing trip was, and it was and he just threw it at me, and I said, "Oh man, that is such a difficult question." But my answer was, "What I can tell you is that it's not the fish; it's the people that you're with." And it's across the board. I've caught plenty of fish, but it's the people you're with that make the trip, and those form the best memories. And I think people are starting to bring that into the fore of, the content or the media or the things that they write about. It's about the experience, and the fish are a bonus. I don't think it's always been like that, because you alluded to that at the start, and I've certainly been guilty of that, where I would go out onto the Wandle and try and catch a massive trout, and then be so excited about the amount of likes and comments that I would get. And I think everybody has to go, not everybody, but most people have to go through that to then come out of the other side and just not be bothered by any of that, and just enjoy a day's fishing, maybe take a few pictures, and there has been really nice fish that I've caught in the last couple of years where I haven't even posted a picture of it, because I'm just like, I'm just not bothered. It doesn't. I don't care. I think I'm well and truly over the internet. Call that because I'm nearly 40, but the internet's a great tool, but it's not the be all and end all, and it can be a huge distraction to what is really important, especially when you're fishing. So the best places to fish, funnily enough, are the ones where you don't have any signal, because then you can't do anything. You have to fish. So, it's more, for me, it's getting to that point where, the grip and grin is being sort of nudged out slightly by this kind of, I don't know whether you'd call it realism or, I'm not slagging off a grip and grin, because, it's nice to see the fish, that get caught, but it's the experience led content that is coming through now, and that is the premise of the spate stuff that we do, with spearheaded by Colin, but myself, Lana, and Patrick, we're all in the same camp. It's not about the fish. It's about going away with your pals and having a great time. I remember we did the Ness and the Oik last spring, and we didn't catch a springer, but honestly, it didn't matter. I haven't laughed so hard on a fishing trip than when I did those 2 or 3 days that we were there. It was just such a great trip. And I remember I had an 11-hour drive home that when we left, and I just felt like I'd had like 2 weeks holiday. It was just such a good switch off. So I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I go off on all these different tangents, but yeah, it's about the experiences now and the characters rather than the fish.
Tangents are good, and I can't agree. I can't agree more with what you're saying. It's absolutely, I'm singing from the same hymn sheet. And the thing that you said about not posting pictures of fish is cool. I'm likewise with you on that, and it doesn't make the day any less enjoyable. And I do worry, and I've said it before on here, that people put themselves under too much pressure. Just enjoy fishing for what it is. If you catch a nice fish and you get a vote, great, that's fantastic. But don't let that be a driving factor. Enjoy the whole experience and try not posting something. See if it's still as equally as enjoyable, because I bet it is. So we're going to move across now to the film. And as I said in the introduction, the film is a little bit more than fish porn. It's a beautiful story. I remember the phone call a little while back about the driving factor for it. You pleased with it?
Yeah. I have lived with that project since I storyboarded it and we did the shoot, and it's been on my mind constantly. So I got to a point where I was like, about 3 weeks ago, where I was like, I can't make this any better. So now's the time for it to go out, because and then I think I messaged you and Boo and I said, look, the film's ready. Let's put it out. And then we got a date together and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I'm so proud of it. That the ironic thing is that I have another one in the bag, which might interest some listeners. But there's another one in the bag that has been shot, which was shot before we shot the Boo one, actually, and then a little bit after. I went back to do some pickup shots, but and now I feel like my skill set because of this film has dramatically increased, and so now I'm super excited to get stuck into the next project. So it's one of those, but the film specifically, the reason I chose to do the story about Boo first was because it's on my home river. That's where I learned to fish, and one of the amazing things about Boo and his writing is a lot of the places in his books I know them. Like I've fished them, so I was able to visualize the characters, and he's just bang on with everything that he writes about the Ribble. So was there a bit of bias there in putting that project out first? I think so, but I was just so passionate about his story. He is, when I don't think I think he's like maybe 15 years older than me, but when I'm in my mid 50s, that's what I want to be. I want to be nipping out for 2-3 hours when the water's right and go into my favorite pools and trying to, catch a fish. And it's that compound effect. If you fish, consistently over a season, you're bound to bump into your quarry, and in this case, salmon, which are hard enough to catch as it is. But on the Ribble, it's such a big system, and the fish move up and down the system given the water. And last year was quite a wet year for the river, so the fish were kind of spread all through the system. So, but yeah, I love it. I'm really proud of it. I'm just glad that it's out the door now. Like I said to you before we started the podcast, that I feel like I've raised a child, and it kind of just outstayed its welcome a little bit. And now it's time to open the front door and go, right, there you go. Off you go out into the world, and hopefully people enjoy it, and hopefully people get something out of it. And you know what, at the very, very least, I hope that people get a glimpse into Boo's character, and they'll want to support him and buy if not all three of his amazing books, because I've got all three of them behind me on that shelf, and I've read them all more than once. They're just such easy, quick reads, and they're such amazing stories. So yeah, your support with the film, Fly Culture's support has been invaluable. But also, I kind of want to repay that forward with trying to help Boo with elevate his status, because I think he really deserves to be a lot more well known for his writing than he is at the moment. So
I'm absolutely with you on that, and I've shouted loudly about him and will continue to as long as I possibly can. You talked about the film being a child that you're letting out for the first time. I often talk on here about the magazine and my worry about, when it goes to the printer, will it come back correct? Then I worry about how the cover will be received by readers. Then I worry about, the post. Then I worry about, are they going to enjoy the read? Has it been a similar process for you, that you thought you've invested so much time into this? have you worried at any stage about how it would be received by people?
Not really. No, I think I could call it like an experience thing, but I'm kind of, there are certain points in life where you obviously you care about what people think, but for me this was quite a selfish project, and I had a feedback round about 5-6 weeks ago where the film was finished in my eyes. I'd taken it as far as I could take it with my own eyes and my own ability. And I thought, right, I need to reach out to a select group of peers and some people I'd never even spoken to before, but I really respected. And about 8 people watched it privately, and out of those 8 people, about 4 of them wrote me an essay back with what was good and what they liked and what they didn't like. But it was all technical, and no one mentioned anything constructive about the story and about the narrative. And that's when I knew that I had something that was pretty decent, because the story wasn't talked about, but it was only sort of praised, which was really good. But it was more the technical aspect. Like the audio was a bit muffled in parts, and there was a couple of clips where the color didn't match because I color graded everything afterwards and that kind of stuff. So it was all technical stuff. So I got to work and I fixed that, and then I tweaked a few things, and then I sat on it, and then I tweaked a couple of things again. And one of those people actually was Sean, Southside Fly Fishing, Sean Afnan, and he was really cool. He was really excited by it, but he sent me a small list of suggestions, and I used some of them, but I didn't use all of them because, I'd spoken to somebody from a really big production house. I'd sent her the film because she made a film a few years ago that kind of sparked me on this filmmaking journey. So I wanted to get in touch with her and see if she would watch it, and she watched it, and she just said, my biggest piece of advice is, if you love the film, then don't change it for anybody, put it out. That's what you should put out. And I was like, okay, that kind of stayed with me. So I tweaked a few things, but ultimately it kind of just, the story never changed. And so I in terms of like caring what people think, I think obviously I want people to like it. But if people get something out of it, then that's brilliant. But if people watch it and they think, oh, that was okay, I think I'm equally as happy, with that as well. I'm not. Maybe ask me in a few months' time, but I think at the minute I'm just so glad it's out, because I was getting tired of living with it, day in, day out. So I'm just glad that people are out there, and people are able to watch it now. So
Interests me what you said about the lady that you sent the film to and the feedback that you got back, because I know with our magazine, I know when we first spoke about it, you said, do you have any ideas? And I said to you, just do whatever you want to do. And that's really important, isn't it, to be able to do that? Because like you say, when you get feedback, and it may have even been when you spoke about it, that it's really key that you stick to your part of that journey, isn't it? Because you can end up being pulled in many directions. And it's the same when people write for us and they pitch me an idea. And I said, that sounds fantastic. And they'll come back with me. I said, no, I want you to write your piece, not what I would write. I want your piece. And it's similar with that. And that helps that creative process a whole lot more then, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it keeps you excited, because you know that that you're not pleasing anybody but yourself in the process. In most of my other work, I have feedback rounds with clients and things like that, and you can only be creative to a point, because you have to, or you also have to stick to the brief. So if there's a brief in place, you kind of have to stick to it because of time, money, and the fact that isn't actually, if you go too one way. That's not what the client wants. So, So in this instance, this was a passion project, in every sense. It was, I kept checking in with Boo to make sure that he was all right for certain things, and he was totally chilled out about it. He was like, just do what you want to do, and he's a bit like you really with that kind of aspect. So yeah, free reign is the ideal for a creative, to be able to kind of reach their potential, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you should be rightly proud. It was wonderful to see it. And like you say, I've been lucky to see it a little while back and absolutely loved it. For people listening, can you give us the title and where they can see it as well?
Yeah. It's interesting, actually. I will answer your question, but I was trying to think of a title for weeks and I couldn't. And the only title that I could think of was Hooked on Hope, because it encapsulated everything. And I rang Boo and I said, mate, I can't think of a title. Can I use Hooked on Hope? And he just, without hesitation, he was like, yeah, of course you can. Yeah, that's fine. And it's so I did rob his title, but it's because I couldn't think of anything more fitting or better. So Hooked on Hope is the title of the film. And then it's on YouTube. So it's on my YouTube channel, which is Wild River Media. But the title of the film is Hooked on Hope dash a salmon fishing film, and the reason I've put that in there is just it just helps the algorithm, just helps people when they're searching for certain things for it to come up. And also, if you see the thumbnail, you want to, Hooked on Hope, it could be about anything. So I wanted it to be quite obvious what it was about. So it's up on YouTube for all to see.
And folks, if you haven't seen it, I know I've been putting it out on social media and collabing with Damon on this and on my personal Facebook as well. But give it a watch, subscribe, follow him, and also, as Damon said as well, buy Boo's books as well. You won't regret those. A contemporary look at fly fishing that, again, I will shout about. Also, I'll throw out there Ben Jayler, Chad Van Zanten. There's so many people writing wonderful contemporary real life fishing stuff that I absolutely adore. So please look those people out if you haven't already. And they've all been on the podcast, so you can get a sense of them if you've not listened to it already. Now, you mentioned your guitar earlier, and we have the Fly Culture playlist. This is the fastball. Nobody likes this question.
No, I did actually. I did remember that you were going to ask me this, but I forgot to look at the song, so I'm just going to find the name of this. Where is it? Oh yeah. Okay, I've got it. Yeah,
go on then.
I've got it. So my song to add to the playlist, last year I did a lot of miles on the road and I listened to a lot of music, but I found this album by accident by this country singer called Stephen Wilson Jr. And that's Stephen with a PH. He's got an album called Son of Dad, and it's weird. He's a country singer, but he uses like a Spanish guitar with some kind of fuzz effect on it. And he uses like weird tunings, which I really dig. I'm really into that kind of stuff. So, but he's got a song called Year to Be Young, 1994. And it is pure nostalgia. I mean, there's like cultural references in there, like Nirvana and MTV and like all this stuff. And when I first heard it, it put like chills down my spine because it just reminded me of being a kid. I think I was 10 at that point, but I remember all of those cultural different cultural references and things like that. So yeah, Year to Be Young, 1994. It's a real stomper of a tune. It's a good one to drive to. So that's my song, that's for sure.
Nice choice. And fascinates me that there's been a few country songs on here. Is there some sort of correlation? I know it well from having fished out in the States, but also from guests that I've had on from the UK have chosen country songs? Is it just a genre that's been sort of uplifted and modernised a little bit and fits with the UK market or Europe market a little bit better?
I, I, I mean, I can only speak for myself, really, but I think, I mean, I'm not a massive country music fan, but I do like. So, I mean, the songwriting is outrageous. Like the whole Nashville scene, go into a room, churn out songs, and da da da. But they tend to be. Again, it's back to the storytelling. The songs tend to have real stories and meaning and connection in, and you can relate. They're relatable, and I think the state of the charts in this country for the last, well, for years and years and years, with pop music and dance music, which has its place, don't get me wrong, but if you want something that really taps into an emotional part of you, then I think you can't beat bit of country music. I think that's for sure. I've got a few artists that I listen to, but he's the newest and probably the best one. He's got a real gravelly voice as well, which makes it a bit more authentic. So, yeah.
I like the sound of that. I will add that to the list a little bit later. We've talked and covered a lot of time. I know you're on a tight schedule at the moment because I guess the little one will be arriving very, very shortly. Are you enjoying the scene of fly fishing as much as you always have done?
Yeah. I think 90% of my friends are they fly fish, and I've met most of them through Instagram. So and we do. I'm in so many group chats, and those things keep me going. Especially some of the jokes that are shared, or some of the stories from fishing trips and things like that. So yeah, I'm loving it. And one of the things that it's a bit like guiding, really. When I guide, I get a real buzz out of people catching fish. But when I'm behind the camera, I get a real buzz out of getting the shot, or getting, the back to the film with Boo. I sat next to there's a set of falls at the top of the Ribble. And sort of from about September, if there's water, you can bet your bottom dollar that there's going to be some salmon trying to get up the falls. And it's where I used to go as a kid. My granddad used to take me. I caught my biggest salmon about 500 yards below there a few years ago, which I think I wrote about in Fly Culture. And I knew that if I went there, I would have to that would be where we would get the fish for the film. So I sat there for 6 hours and filmed the fish leaping over. Now, me 20 years ago would have probably had a fly, and dare I say a worm in there, trying to get them. But I was just so happy to sit there and try and get. It was like a game running around with. I had a camera on a tripod and I had one hand held, and there's 3 falls together, and I try and get the fish going up falls, but of course you blink and you miss it. So it took me about 2 days to go through all the footage to try and find all the fish that I'd managed to get, because some things I didn't see. I just had to go back through it with the camera. So for me, that is a real part of fly fishing. Is the filming and telling the stories. That's probably the bit that I'm most enjoying at the minute. And don't get me wrong, I still love going out and I still love catching fish, and I still love having a trip with pals, or even just by myself. So I'm enjoying it more than ever. And I guess that is reinforced by the fact that I can't do it as much now. So I have to make the most of it and make sure it really counts when you do go. My advice to anyone out there who's listening and they don't have kids yet is, fish as much as you can now while you can, because your life might get busy at some point, and you might not be able to go as much. But yeah,
wise words. How can people connect with you? How can they find you? What are your social media handles, etc., website handles, bits and pieces like that?
So I am. I'm in the middle of building my website at the moment. So that's kind of off the table for a second. But I only use Instagram for social media. I'm not on anything else. I can't deal with the noise. So my personal handle, my fishing handle is Damon Valentine _fishing. I think. I don't even know. If you type Damon Valentine in, I'll pop up. And my work Instagram is Wild River Media, and that's just client work. So that's that's work. And then my personal page is just reels. Whenever I fish, I have a little camera clip on my rucksack, and I'll just film little bits and bobs, and that's what I'll put on there. So that's how you can find me. Reach out if you want to talk about camera gear.
Or Sony camera gear anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
David, it's been wonderful to catch up. Folks, give him a follow, give it a like. He's doing some good stuff, and we'll always shout about good people doing good stuff in fly fishing. It's been great to catch up as always. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast today.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you for your support. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Everyone, this has been the Fly Culture podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you've enjoyed this one. As ever, there'll never be any charge for these. Just enjoy them. And of course, there'll be another one coming very, very soon. Thanks so much for listening.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.